All right, welcome to the Art of the New Employee, 3 steps to rapid productivity. In today's environment, it's a big challenge keeping employees, finding employees. And so when we do find a new employee, we really want to make sure that we are doing everything we can to get them productive as quickly as possible, feeling like they're part of the team as quickly as possible, and help them grow quickly. Because, one of the things that people forget about is, especially when you've got a small team, it's really a big deal when you get a small team, but no matter what size your team, but when you add one new person to the team, you actually lose productivity, because you lose the productivity at a minimum of the trainer while they're training. You were short one person, and during that training period, you're short anywhere from half to another full person, and possibly parts of a team, depending on the situation. So getting new team members up to speed more quickly is really critical, especially in small business, when adding 1 or 2 people might be 20% of your workforce, which is a substantial hit on productivity. So I want to talk about the 3 key steps. In the chat box, if you could do me a favor and put in your name, your company name, and your number 1 team challenge. Go ahead and put that in chat. So while you're doing that, real quick about myself, I'm a recovering engineer. So I spent 20 years in the corporate world, the electronics world as an engineer, took down a lot of roles. I decided I wanted to get into something that was more along my passions of helping people, business development, growing small businesses. I enjoyed those parts of my corporate career much better than I did the engineering part and the senior management stuff. So I joined the coaching world. It'll be 17 years in July. Since then, I've been an international speaker, global trainer, master coach, top 50 coach in the world with Action Coach. Just really enjoying helping small businesses. We've trained and coached thousands of businesses over the last 17 years. So on the personal side, my wife Liz, my daughter Jessica, and her husband Rune, and then our grandson Augustus, who we had with us Thursday through Sunday. He's down over there on the right side, and we had a blast with him, but we both need to sleep for about a week to get caught up after watching the 3.5-year-old for 3.5 days. Just about killed us, but we had a blast. And then my hobbies are bourbon, cigars, and golf. I enjoy my bourbon a little too much probably. There's my bar, and then there's the storeroom. So let me take a real quick look at what's in the chat box here. Hugh, you've got your VA business, getting new team members up to expected levels quickly, and that's really important. Our challenge here at Action Coach Bluegrass, we're a smaller team. We don't have an HR department, so we have to do the work, and so we have to get really well organized to do that. So thank you for sharing. So the employment climate, it's really tough right now. Finding new team members is harder than at any time I've seen in the last 17 years. 17 years that I've been coaching, I've never seen finding good team members so difficult. It is extremely hard. There's lots of reasons people have for why, and that's a fact I tell my clients. So because it's so hard to find team members, the onboarding process is more important than ever. It was always important, but now we really can't afford to get it wrong, because we really need our team members. We really need them to come on, and we need to do everything we can to help them be successful for their benefit and for ours. And the other thing to remember, like I mentioned at the start, is we actually lose productivity during the onboarding process. Somebody has to stop doing what they're doing and help with the onboarding. So we must get better at accelerating it and getting the new team member involved in the acceleration as well. And if at any time you got any questions, you can just unmute yourself and ask, or you can put it in the chat. If I see the chat flash, I'll stop and take a look at it, but feel free to just unmute yourself and ask questions if you've got them. So onboarding new employees. There's a lot of features, a lot of parts to the onboarding process. So there's the HR forms and the information, the I-9s and the W-4s. That's part of the payroll, but getting employee manual, forms, guides, benefits, all the HR compliance things. And then on the payroll side, I-9, W-4, getting direct deposit set up, talking about time tracking, and any of the logistics for getting accounts set up. Matthew and I spent some time this morning getting his laptop set up. There's IT involved, and so the more systemized you can have that, the better. and make it really clear whose roles and responsibilities each of these things are. And then training. Until that new team member is trained, they're going to cost you resources. It's just how it works. They cost you themselves as a resource, and also their trainer. Whoever's training them is going to be the time they're spending training them is going to be time that they're not as productive. That's not good, that's not bad, it's just fact. So 3 steps. First step is just define the skills. And we do this by creating what I call a skills matrix for the position. And it's identifying the skills and the skill mastery levels. And it's not just the skills for the person. So this is one where you do it by role. A person may have multiple roles in a company. So each role should have separate skills. And there's skill mastery levels. There's 4 skill mastery levels that you need to identify, decide which skill level does the person in this role need to achieve. The 4 skill levels are awareness, which means simply they're aware of the skill and how it fits into the company. They don't necessarily know how to do it, but they understand it, and they understand how it fits into what you do. Then the user level. When they are at a user level of mastery, that means they can perform the task with some supervision. Specialist, means they can perform the task without supervision. It means they've truly mastered it. Whereas a user still requires supervision. And specialist. And then the expert means, again, that's another one. That's kind of literally, they're the expert. They're the best at it in your company. They may give talks on it and write articles on it. Most businesses don't need a lot of experts in a lot of skills. But there's probably a few things in your business where you do need one or more people to be an expert at one or more skills. So what a skill matrix looks like is this. So for each skill area, so there might be general office would be skill area 1, and then these are the 5 skills there. 1 they need to be aware of, 3 they need to be user level, and 1 they need to be a specialist. Another skill area might be computer applications, the Microsoft Office, and the skills might be Outlook, Excel, Word, PowerPoint, and they might have different levels. Then skill area 3 might be more specific to their role. They might need to be a welder. They might need to be a marketer. They might need to, and then the subset of skills. And this isn't a list of every single thing they need to do. I look for the critical. What are the 3 to 5 most important skills in each area? And where do I want them to be? What level of achievement do I want them to get to so that they're solid? If you're this, that means you're an A or B. You're an A or B employee. You know how to do things. You're doing it, and you require minimal supervision. And I can trust you to perform your duties. And at this level, they're good contributors, not just to basic production, but they're also improving systems and getting better over time. So having that skills matrix for the position allows you to, and this is also great to have with the interview. It's great to use to create the job description that you're going to write, really understanding the position. Now, I recommend most companies take the time to basically create skills matrix for every role in the company. Not just the ones when you're hiring for a role. It's really important because it's part of onboarding and getting them up to speed more quickly. But just think about how everybody on the team, if everybody understood the skills that they were supposed to have, the skill mix that was expected for their role, in the company. Just think if they knew that. And then you could use this at performance review and in performance improvement discussions. Hey, I want you to get from user to specialist here so that I can just turn you loose and you can do this on your own and not need somebody monitoring you all the time. So that's what a skills matrix looks like. And so you need to do that for any roles you're hiring for. But then again, I also recommend do it for all positions so that everybody knows, and then you can use it as part of your performance improvement, performance management system, which is a whole nother topic we could into how I use this in performance management, but you could probably guess at least 50% of it. So then you need to create a 6-week training plan. Onboarding should take a minimum of 30 days to be really complete. That doesn't mean it's 30 days before they can do anything, but Disney's one of the world-class companies when it comes to training their employees on how to be, on how to be guest advocates. And their onboarding and training process is 30 full days. And that's before they even let you go out in the park. Now, most of us in small businesses can't afford to park somebody in an office or conference room for a month before they get any work. But that just shows how important it is. And so, depending on the role of the person, their initial training plan should be anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks. And what I want you to define here, and I'll show you what that looks like in a minute, but you should take that skills matrix and now you turn it into a 6-week plan. And you identify which skills and skill levels you expect them to achieve each week. So at the end of week 1, I expect them to be a user at these levels and just aware of these. And at the end of the second week, now they're at a little higher skill. And each week, you're adding skills, you're adding skill levels so that the training is focused and specific. Going back to that skills matrix, these are 7 weeks across the top. So at the end of week 1, I want you to be aware of skills 1 and 3 in skill area 1 and 1 and 3 in skill area 2 and actually a user of skill level 2 in both areas. I want you to be able to do it. I'll be there watching you, but I want you to be able to do that with some guidance. So I always tell people, you're going to see a lot your first week, but by the end of the first week, I want you to be able to do X and Y without me. I'll be watching. So I want you to absorb as much, but make sure that come Friday, you can do X and Y. And then every week you layer on skills. Some skills take longer. It means you might be talking about it for 4 weeks before they get to the user level. This way the trainer knows what they're expected to be teaching, and the team member knows what they're expected to learn. This becomes basically the syllabus for their first 6 or 7 weeks on the job. Any questions about that so far? And again, you can use something similar to do performance management. So column 1 instead of week might be a self-evaluation where the employee rates themselves on how they think. Column 2 might be your rating of where they are on the skill achievement. And then column 3 might be the next target. Okay, I want you to focus on becoming a specialist in area 1, skill 2, in area 2, skill 1.
What are the factors determined to move somebody from one level to another?
it's usually amount of supervision required. So user means you can do it with some supervision. Specialist means you can do it really with minimal to no supervision. And so to know that, you have to have measurable criteria. So what's the accountability built in? What are the KPIs, the key performance indicators of each of these skills? How do we know they're doing it well? That they're doing it well enough to need little to no supervision. How do we track that? What are the measures? What are our metrics? So as we're laying these out, we have to say, so what, in between week 4 and week 5 on skill 2, when they go from user to specialist, how will I know? What's the metric? Is it observation? Is it measured? So you have to decide that. You have to come up with that and define what that means. But the more clear you are with what your needs are, the more specific you are about the skills and what's required to achieve the different levels, the better the trainer can train, and the better the new team member can learn, because they understand what it is they're trying to learn in what time frame. Nothing's worse than the trainer, and I've sat at a client's office and watched, it was a doctor's office, and I sat there and I watched one of the front desk team lead train a new person at the front desk by basically having them sit next to them at their computer while they're scheduling patients in an extraordinarily complex scheduling system, and just point with the mouse and say, click here, click here, click here, do this, see this, hit this button, and then that. Got it? The team member sitting there nodding, got it. Team member didn't learn a thing. She didn't have a pen and piece of paper with her. She wasn't taking notes. She didn't learn anything. But who was she to say she wasn't learning? And the trainer thought she was doing a great job because she was showing her how to do it. But I remember, showing somebody and training them are two different things. And as a trainer, your job is to make sure they actually understand. So I actually stopped them and said, hey, are you memorizing everything she told you? Do you have photographic memory, or how are you going to remember all this? Because there's a lot to scheduling here. She's like, I'm just really watching. I'm not really. I said, okay, so where's your notepad? Take notes how to do this. Oh, I left it in my purse, because they actually did give her one. So they had done that. But she didn't have it with her. So she wasn't an active learner, and the trainer wasn't an active trainer. Trainer was a shower. So let me real quick share a screen with you. Share a different. I'm going to draw here. So one of the things that is important for us to remember is how people learn. Hugo, you've seen this before. This is the 4 levels of learning. So when a new team member comes in, especially if they've never been in our industry, they're what we call unconsciously incompetent. They don't know what they don't know. It's a new industry. They don't know anything about it. So they don't even know what they don't know. Then they start learning, the training process. They start becoming aware of stuff. And they start what they start becoming aware of is just how much they don't know. So they go from being unconsciously incompetent to be consciously incompetent. So now they know what they don't know. And they do that. That's part of the awareness. They're now aware of skills, but they're not competent at them yet. Then they get to be that user level, which is consciously competent. And they can do it, but it's not automatic. That's at user level. They have to think like a teenage driver learning to drive. Right? Kids, when they're little kids, they have a little steering wheel. They think they're driving a car. They don't even know they're not driving a car. Or they've ridden a big wheel, so they think they can drive a car. Or they rode a bike, so they think they can drive a car. Completely different. They don't know what they don't know. Then as they start trying, they get older, they start seeing it, they realize, oh, wow, I don't know how to drive a car. I don't even know how to start it. I don't even know how you made it do that. Then they take driver's ed and they start learning. They become consciously competent, but they have to think about every step of the way. Nothing's automatic. And then you get to where most experienced drivers are, where you're unconsciously competent, where you don't even have to think to drive. You just do it. You don't think, step on the brake, put it in drive, take your foot off the brake, push down the gas. You don't think about that at all. You just do it naturally. And you get to work and you don't even remember the 20-minute drive to get to the office. That's called an unconscious competence. Now, if I put you in a NASCAR car or an Indy race car, you now go right back to being unconsciously incompetent because you have no idea how to drive that kind of car. So when they're going from consciously incompetent to consciously competent, when they're going back and forth between these two, and then when they're trying to get from here to here, so to get from consciously incompetent to consciously competent is just motivation to learn. It just takes motivation, perseverance, effort. Going from consciously competent to unconsciously incompetent, that's when we start experiencing, that's a little harder. And when that's not going well, that's when you can have fear, emotion, frustration, anxiety. So recognize that in people when they're struggling, that those are signs that they're trying to get from consciously competent to unconsciously competent. That makes sense? Any questions about that? So it's really important to understand how people learn and those processes they're going through and to recognize when you're talking to them about something that's an unconsciously incompetent, at a different level. So we have to make sure that we're aware. And that awareness is where they go from unconsciously incompetent, don't know what I don't know, to now I know what I don't know. User is that consciously competent, and then specialist is the unconsciously competent. You've got to help them get to those achievement levels. All right, so step 3. This seems like duh, but so many people that they put together training plans and they don't use them. 3 steps to using the training plan effectively. 1 is to review the training plan with the trainer. Make sure the trainer understands the expectations of what they're going to be training and what the new team member is expected to learn each week. Make sure they understand the difference between awareness and user and specialist, and talk about how do we know they're a user or they're a specialist? How do we measure that? Talk about that with them. We often pair our best, we often make our best, the best person at the job be the trainer. They're not always going to be the best trainer. So you have to sometimes train the trainer on how to train because they may not have that experience. And just like making the best salesperson, the sales manager, and the best engineer, the engineering manager, not always the best choice. So pick your trainers well and then meet with them. Go over the training plan. Make sure they understand your expectations of them as a trainer and how they're going to bring along and how their success as a trainer is going to be measured. Then review the training plan with the team member. Again, set expectations. Let them see and know what they're expected to learn. Let them know they're going to see and learn a lot of things, but they're going to master them in a very specific order. And then frequent check-ins with the trainer and trainee. I have my new employees, and Matt, you'll find this out very soon. End of every day, what'd you learn today? What was your biggest win? What was your biggest challenge? What's your goal for tomorrow? Teach them that there's an expectation that they're learning, that there's an expectation that they'll have some successes, that there's an expectation that some things won't go as planned. They're new. They're learning all this. That you have expectations, that they have goals that they're trying to achieve. During their first 6 weeks should be to achieve whatever the mastery item for that week is. You get to do the same check-ins with the trainer. Trainer might not be every day, but never less than a week. Build accountability into it. Make the trainer accountable for results, and then also the new team member is accountable for their own learning. When the team member understands what they're supposed to learn, they do a better job learning it because they filter out the noise. Okay, I'm just supposed to be aware of all that, but next week you expect me to do that on my own. So I'm going to focus on that. I'm going to ask more questions because they're going to expect me to be able to do that. Maybe sitting next to you, but still, it'll be me doing it and you watching. That's user level. So we've got to share the training plan. So once you've got the training plan, you've got to share it with them. And when we do that, I've seen it accelerate the results of getting people up to speed, just tremendously, 50% or more. And productivity and happier. The trainer's happier, the team member's happier, the team is happier, the owners are happier because there's an organization to it, and there's a way that people learn. And knowing what they're supposed to learn helps them learn faster. You got to set expectations and share them and talk about them and ask. If you're at a place where you can run into an employee in the hallway, say, "Hey, how's it going? Hey, so what are you learning today? What's the number one thing you've learned so far this week? What's your biggest win?" Have those conversations, ask those. Create a learning environment. If you just throw them into a production environment, they don't get a chance to learn. So you have to create a learning environment. Yes, we want them to be productive, but the best way to get them productive quickly and have them stick around and be happy with the way they learn and feel they're contributing is to have a really, really good, solid learning plan that helps them learn the right things at the right time, at the right speed. Because otherwise they try to learn it all at once, and that's just not possible. Most of our roles are too complicated for that. So remember, until that new team member is trained, they're costing you two resources, themselves and the trainer. Define the skills to be learned and applied. Create a skill-based 6-week training plan. And it can be anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks. And then implement the training plan effectively. And ask, follow up. Show interest in them. Show interest in the trainer and how it's going for the trainer. Remember that you don't always have to have one person do all the training. Sometimes you can have a team do the training. But one person needs to be the lead trainer who's responsible for the 6-week training plan. But other people in the team can be involved in the training. You don't have to take your lead person out of production for 6 weeks. You can let the whole team support the training. But when you do that, then the whole team needs to see the training plan and understand roles and responsibilities and accountability for what they're training, and then what good results look like. What does it mean? What does it look like to be a user of that skill? What does it look like to be a specialist? What are the key performance indicators? What are the metrics? How do we know? And it's really that simple. So any questions?
I have one. So in a small company where you may just have a very small core team, or maybe just even like the general manager or a couple of people, like what have you seen be successful in defining the trainer role? Like, is it something that is just taken by that small team, or have you seen any models in which they can find external experts and make them, work and be a sustainable solution over time?
So, it needs to be somebody on the team who's doing the training, but I bring in outside resources. I've had clients use outside resources sometimes. Some skills you can find YouTube classes, some free, some inexpensive. Udemy, udemy.com is a good resource for online training that a couple of my clients subscribe to that, and they'll assign courses to new employees or employees who are learning new skills. And I like to have one person that's kind of oversees the training plan, but if you have a couple people involved to do the training, but it's tough in a small business because you're taking up a significant chunk of your production team. If there's only a few of you, that whoever's doing the training, so you have to, maybe you make the training period a little longer so it doesn't impact production is all. But I always really focus on identifying as many things as I can that I can get them doing semi-independently as quickly as possible so that they're productive at something quickly. In my busy dental practice, when I first started with them, bringing in new dental assistants was basically you just shadow somebody for a month, and then we'll start letting you try stuff. And so it was taking 3-4 months for new employees to get productive, and a lot of them were quitting before they ever got to that because they were bored and they felt like they weren't learning anything because they were just watching. And so we had them put together a skills matrix and a plan, and now we're getting assistants up to speed doing some, not all, but some basic things semi-independently in 3 to 4 weeks. There's a lot they can't do that's going to take longer, but some of the skills don't take as deep a knowledge. And so so a big part of putting that together, that 6-week plan, is thinking about the resources you have available to get somebody to be a specialist or an advanced user, but coming up with what can I get them doing as quickly as possible so that they feel productive, and I start buying some of my time back. And so you might have a 6-week plan to get them productive, and then another 6 or 8 week plan to follows up to get them to the next level.
Okay.
But I try, so when there's fewer people, which means you're using up a bigger chunk of your resources, I try to get them up to speed, identify some things that I can get them doing independently that add value to the company as quickly as I can, which buys me time to teach them the things that require more skills, more training for a longer period of time, and still makes it productive, so that it's productive for you as the owner, but it's also productive for the employee. Employees don't like feeling, they know when they're not being productive. Very few people like being unproductive for weeks and weeks and weeks. So I'm always looking for stuff as quickly as possible I can teach them to do on their own, so that they feel a sense of accomplishment, and you start buying your time back more quickly. Does that answer your question, Hugo?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. So what else? Anybody else? Brittany, Kelsey?
I work in the funeral industry, which is a little bit different. So having a human resources here starting in November, it's very uncommon in the funeral industry.
Mhm.
So one of the things that I struggle with, but not struggle with, is setting up a good onboarding, because there's not necessarily trainings that you give online. You come from the school, and you do have to do so many removals and so many embalmings, and so
Right.
but for good onboarding, what would you recommend for that?
So, so on the skill side, it might be, um, shadowing somebody who's experienced, so they come in. So this would be similar to when we bring in a new hygienist who's been through a 2-year, a training program, got state certified, and so they're certified as a hygienist, but they've really never done that in your practice. So some of it is the learning your specific implementation of the different skills. Well, here's how we do that. So there's some of that. So it's knowing. So they've learned a bunch of skills. Now it's how do we apply them at Scott Funeral Home? Here's how we apply that skill. So with the hygienists, we basically have them the first week, even with new doctors, we bring in new dentists, even if they have experience. First week is just shadowing another dentist who is, and can talk about and just talk through the procedures and just, reinforce, here's how we do that. Here's the record keeping we do, because there's record keeping requirements, but how do you at Scott do those records, right? So it may be your computer training. It might be for your, how do you do your record keeping? And it's the application of those skills at your company versus the textbook version that they learned when they took their classes and got their certification. So now it's, here's how we do that here. So it might be critical conversations. How do you, if somebody's going to interact with a family, how do you have those? Do they shadow? How much do you want them to be aware of other functions around the funeral home?
Okay.
And it's, so it's still, in that case, the skills and training tend to be more around making sure that they understand how you apply that skill at your funeral home.
Okay, yeah.
So, good question. What other questions? You still with us, Brittany? I know you were in the car, so you might not be able to talk. So, you said biggest challenge is getting the right fit for the position long term. So, some of that's in the setting of expectations, the job, the position description, getting really good definition of the long term role that you're looking to fill.
Yeah, hey, and I just found the unmute button. Hey, good to see you again, Mark. Yeah, so I guess because all those things sounded good, the skills assessment, I think, is something we desperately need to include. I guess a question I kind of had was, so you're saying that we should fill that out and then we should show that and talk to the new employee about it too, right? So they're under understanding of what's expected of them. Is that correct?
Right. So the trainer knows what they're supposed to train, and the team member understands what they're supposed to learn in what order.
Perfect. So I guess my question is, and maybe it's just that icky spot of when you have to have someone new come on board and it's just a difficult process getting them to learn and everything. But let's just say you're going through that, you're in the first couple of weeks and some things are going well and some things are just really not taking off. What do you suggest a trainee or a manager do to kind of basically, I guess I'm asking to understand if they're ever going to improve the things that they're not improving, or if that's just, I guess that's what I mean by long term. So if maybe this just isn't where their skill set is and it's not a good fit, do we need to change what they do? Or is it just a part of that new employee not picking up that area? What should a small business owner do to make sure, yes, they're getting someone productive that's all well-rounded holistically, but still, really seeing that progress happen, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, perfect sense. So one of the things that that I've done over the past is that's one of the reasons why I'm asking frequently, what are you learning? What wins that you have? And I ask both the trainer and the trainee, so I can get feedback from both. And then that allows you, so if they're not there in 2 weeks, that allows you to sit down and talk about it and say, hey, and with the trainer and the trainee both, and and talk about what's keeping us from getting that. Do we need different training? Did we underestimate how long that would take? Everybody learns at a different pace, and so you can adapt and adjust it. And you might realize, hey, we thought this person knew this and this, and this is where, going back to the previous, sometimes it's, we thought you had that skill, you thought you had that skill, we all did, but the way we apply that skill in our business is different than you were thinking. So now we've got to look at, maybe we got to do some untraining.
Yeah. And I guess kind of where I guess the second half of my question was, and I think Hugo said this kind of earlier, I mean, we're a small company as well. So I think our problem is we get a little impatient sometimes, hoping that new trainee can learn very quickly, but also being small and, knowing we're training them 40 hours a week. What would you say is a good time frame to be patient with a new trainee for? I know you said this is a 6-week program. So is that where for 6 weeks we might see things going up and down, but that's okay because that's the process? Or is it more of like that month time frame? If you're not seeing a lot of these indicators hit on that skills assessment, then within 4 weeks, or I guess I was kind of looking for like a time frame. What's a reasonable expectation, if that?
Yeah. I mean, I expect to start seeing positive results in 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay.
Doesn't mean they, that let me know, yep, they're on the right track. If you find yourself 2 to 3 weeks in hoping, that's a sign that, hey, we need to get this beyond hope and talk about it and figure out, are we training wrong? Again, we're in small businesses, so we often don't have on staff professional trainers, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have professionals, but not necessarily professional trainers. So we got to ask ourselves, is it the training? Is it the learning style? Is the trainer explaining everything out loud, but the learner learns visually? you have to figure out, am I training them wrong? Are they a visual learner versus an auditory learner? Kind of balance of being impatient and just being assertive. We need to learn this. Let's try teaching it a different way. Let's talk to the employee. Is it really clear what exactly they're supposed to learn? Do they understand what they're supposed to learn? Because they might think they're learning it.
Yeah, and if one of the skills is something very, very simple, let's just say it's taking notes. So obviously they're being trained all day. So taking good notes on what we're teaching them is obviously the number one skill they should have immediately. Let's just say it's a skill like that. You've been very clear about the expectations. Is that something where day one or day two, they're not doing it? You can just go ahead and have those conversations. And if they're continuing to do it after a couple more days after that, then that's no longer an impatience thing. I guess that's my clarification.
Yeah, that sounds like
correct.
More like a requirement.
Yes.
That they take notes and just say, hey, I noticed you're not taking any notes. So is that because you've got a photographic memory, or you're just not a good note taker? Or, and just ask.
Yep.
That's what I did with that client. I stepped in and said, so why aren't you taking notes? Oh, I'm just listening. Oh. So do you remember everything she said? No. Okay. Let's get you a pad of paper and a pen.
Sounds
and take notes. And then we had a talk with the trainer later, because the trainer had been told to make sure they had a pad of paper and a pen. And the trainer hadn't done their job. It takes two to succeed at training, the trainer and the learner. And so the conversation with the learner is, are they participating as a learner? Are they giving feedback? Are they telling you, what they're learning? Match up what they tell you they're learning with what the trainer says they're learning. They say, yep, I learned how to do this today. I asked the trainer, hey, Mary said she learned how to do this today. Would you agree? Sometimes it's getting, having the conversation about what learning something is. In a small business, you can only be patient for so long. At 30 days, you kind of know if they're going to make it or not in 30 days. We always give people 90-day probation, but at 30 days, you're probably 75% confident on whether they're going to make it or not. And at 60 days, you're 100% confident whether they're going to make it or not.
true. I think what you've said kind of states what we need to do is a lot more towards that beginning with it, because I think we just didn't hold them to the basics in the beginning. So that just kind of is a snowball effect potentially. So thank you for answering those, Mark. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you kind of only get one chance to teach people the culture and what your real expectations are. And that, by the end of a couple of weeks, you've kind of lost now you're retraining, and that's always harder.
It is very much so.
Because, first couple of weeks, everything is great, and now all of a sudden everything's not great, and they don't understand why. And I've done that before. So Matt's over here taking notes because he's our new marketing manager. So he's thinking, where's my skills matrix, and what are my expectations? And I'm thinking, oh man, he's going to ask me for this tomorrow.
Yep.
So, so what else? Any other questions?
Well, one thing I struggle with is especially with technology, when there are constant changes, it's really hard. There are constant updates, and you're supposed to write a system for people how to do something. And it seems like, oh, I'm going to have to write a new system every couple months. And how do you deal with that?
I have the employee, great question. I have the employee update the procedure as they're being trained. And if you're training them in something that you don't have any procedure for, you have them write the procedure while they're learning it. So that way you're not always having to do it, and they'll learn it better because they had to write it down, and then have them try it using what they wrote down and find all the gaps in it. So if there's no procedure, you have them write it while you're training them. If there is a procedure, you have them follow along and update it with the changes, especially with technology. Yeah, because all of our systems are changing, and how you do this or how you do that, or where you can find this, where you can find that. changes sometimes. So I have the trainee update the documentation along the way, or create the documentation along the way. All right. So let's wrap it up here. Now it's time to put all this into action. You went to a workshop, you learned a bunch of stuff, and so put a plan in place to figure out, what's the first skills matrix you want to put together that you want them to learn. Start doing that. Now, to thank you, what I'm offering is basically a free 1-hour strategy session for you and your company on onboarding or retention of new employees. So we could schedule a time to just talk through and kind of do a brainstorming session on, the specifics that you're working with. We can look at the templates. I can share some of the spreadsheet templates I've got for these and figure out what the right one is for you. Walk through it and talk about onboarding, your process, or any retention or employee satisfaction issues that you want to talk about during that hour, just to help out so that you can keep employees, grow employees. So just email me at markmcnulty@actioncoach.com. I will send you a link to go ahead and get on my calendar. Any other questions before we wrap up?
Nope. Thanks so much, Mark.
Okay. Appreciate you guys. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and feel free to reach out, and happy to help with any issues you're having with onboarding or just long-term retention issues. Thank you very much. Hope everybody has a great rest of your day and a good week, and I look forward to meeting with all of you, and just email me and we'll get something set up.
Thanks, Mark.
All right. Thanks, Brittany. Thank you, Kelsey, and talk to you soon, Hugo.
Thank you. Bye.